Welcome back to Solo Marvel Champion. This is my review of The Rise of Red Skull after playing the campaign 4 times. This is the minimum number of plays I like to have before reviewing a campaign. Some things to note, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't played it yet and want to be surprised, click away now. I play True Solo and Standard, so that is the perspective I'm bringing to this review. And while I'm talking about Standard, I do want to mention something about Expert. At the end of my Hawkeye vs. Red Skull video, I mentioned that I'd noticed something about the campaign which made it easier. I was talking about something I'd seen in Expert setup. In Expert campaign play, your hit points are persistent, so whatever you end a scenario with is what you'll start the next one with. What I noticed and thought was unique about this campaign, because I never actually read Expert setup, is that you're given an option to heal up to max HP by taking an Expert obligation card. This excited me because it made me think I might want to play this campaign in Expert. But then I went through the other campaign guides and they all have some version of this. So that did let me down a little bit, but I don't really play Expert, so it's fine. I also want to give a quick note about how I score campaigns. I'll rate every scenario on a scale of 1 to 5 for blind difficulty. This is how difficult I think it is the very first time you play that scenario. After explaining why I think that is, I'll give a modifier for repeat plays. Once you know how to beat the scenario, this is how much less difficult I think it is. Sometimes the campaign structure will also factor into this modifier. This gives a final difficulty for each scenario, which I then add up to give a total campaign difficulty rated 1 to 10. I also rate each scenario for how much fun I have with it, and then add or subtract points for what I feel the campaign structure adds to that level of fun. Finally, I give it a 1 to 10 replay rating, which is literally just total fun minus campaign difficulty. If I think a campaign is a lot more fun than it is difficult, I'm more likely to replay it. And it should go without saying that these are just my opinions and thus 100% subjective. I only want to talk about campaign structure briefly here because most of it is built into the scenarios. You'll make 3 choices in the campaign which affect your game. The first after defeating Crossbones, the second after defeating Absorbing Man, and the third during the Zola scenario. This one's a play choice, not an explicit campaign choice, and more on that later. With Crossbones, there's a campaign aspect which follows you through the entire campaign, the experimental weapons. You have a stack of 4 of these attachments, one of which will be revealed during setup. Then, during play, the main scheme advancing can reveal additional experimental weapons. You'll add each that come into play to the campaign log, and then shuffle those listed into the encounter deck at the start of each subsequent scenario. These can be removed during play with a hero action and some resources, but just by being revealed they are added to the campaign log. I've talked in my Juggernaut videos about what I call mulligan priority, and I do the same thing here sometimes. Mulligan priority is making sure I have the resources to expose Juggernaut in my opening hand, or in this case, to discard that experimental weapon. I say sometimes though, because there are only 2 I really want to get rid of right away: Energy Shield and Power Gauntlets. I'll let the others sit for a while, but will eventually get rid of them because they can stack up and begin to snowball with bigger attack numbers and surge effects. And this does speak to difficulty. I give Crossbones a blind difficulty of 3 just because you really don't know, number 1, about the snowballing effect, number 2, about keeping the main clear so additional experimental weapons don't come out, and number 3, because of the Legions of Hydra set. I'm actually not going to modify this one down because even when you do know these things, main 1B only has a threshold of 3, so an advance or even a circumstance where you need to flip down early, as I did in my Hawkeye game, you can just lose that main anyway. On top of that, Legions of Hydra is a really difficult set, and Crossbones has ways to chew through the encounter deck looking for weapons, so acceleration tokens are a possibility. This is actually the first time I have not modified a scenario's difficulty down in a review. For fun, I give this scenario a 4, but that's partly because I enjoy it so much in standalone play. Crossbones takes 3 mod sets, giving you a ton of variability when you're playing outside of campaign. I prefer him over the Hood for this because the Hood takes 7 sets, but I usually only see 3 or 4 of them. This makes Crossbones a tighter and more focused scenario. Before moving on to Absorbing Man, let's talk about your first campaign choice. For achieving victory here, you get to choose a tech upgrade with the setup keyword. Your choices are Adrenal Sims, which let you ready your hero and heal 5 damage, Tactical Scanner, which lets you draw 5 cards, Emergency Teleporter, which tutors an ally into play and gives them a tough, and my favorite, which is the Laser Cannon, which deals 5 damage to the villain and each enemy engaged with you. This is the one I like to take and hold on to for Zola, and if I don't need it in Zola, I'll hold on to it for the Sleeper once I get to Red Skull. Note that these are a one-time use. Discard this card and remove it from the campaign log. Campaign setup for the remaining scenarios tell us to search our decks for all cards with the setup keyword and put them into play, and while it's not made explicitly clear until a page 12 rules clarification, removing a card from the campaign log also removes it from your deck. Moving on to Absorbing Man. Aside from the experimental weapons which get added from the campaign log, which I'm not going to mention for every villain, there are 2 campaign elements in this scenario. The choice you'll make at the end of the scenario, which I'll talk about after my fun rating, and delay counters. Delay counters matter a little bit during the scenario because there are some encounter cards which care about that number, but mostly they're here to add threat to the main scheme in the final scenario. Absorbing Man cares about the traits he absorbs from the surrounding environment. These can be found on an aptly named environment card, which also give him an effect when he makes an undefended attack. I do give him a 2 for blind difficulty because of those undefended attack effects and because multiple traits at once can be difficult, but I modify him all the way down to 0 because, number 1, just don't take undefended attacks and you won't even have to worry about those effects. Number 2, he only gets multiple traits from the Super Absorbing Power side scheme, and it only has 3 threat. It can come out as an encounter card or on the push from stage 1 to stage 2. So if it's not in play and you're about to push, just know that you also need to thwart 3. If you can do both of these things, you can remove every iota of difficulty from Absorbing Man in my opinion. He's also not very fun. I'm going to give him a 2 because I don't hate playing him, but I don't ever play him standalone. After defeating him, you get to choose a basic condition upgrade. Basic Thwart gives you plus 2 HP and plus 1 Thwart. Basic Attack gives you plus 1 HP and plus 1 Attack. Basic Defense gives you plus 3 HP and plus 1 Defense. And Basic Recovery gives you plus 4 HP and plus 1 Recovery. You'll have the opportunity to improve these later in the campaign, which exhausts this to draw a card after doing a certain thing. All of these have a place, but from a strategic standpoint, I always pick Basic Thwart. And that's because of Red Skull. Improved Thwart lets you draw a card when you defeat a side scheme, and Red Skull puts out a new side scheme every turn. Now, if I have a hero who wants to defend every turn, I'll take Basic Defense, but if not, I'm going Basic Thwart. Now we come to one of my favorite villains in the game, Taskmaster. I'm going to go ahead and give him a 4 for fun because I pretty much have a great time every time I play him. His contribution to the campaign structure is giving you the opportunity to rescue some captives by defeating the Captured by Hydra side schemes. And I recommend that, regardless of what aspect you have been playing, you play Justice against Taskmaster. One way or another lets you tutor Captured by Hydra, and Justice generally helps you clear them. You want to clear them because the captives are super powerful. They're 0 cost allies with a combined thwart and attack of 4, 3 hit points, a sweet when played response, and they're added to your deck for the rest of the campaign. I said in my Hawkeye game that I'd love to see 3 but would be happy only getting 2, but then I went and got all 4 of them, and you could hear the excitement in my voice because I'd never done that before. You can get unlucky and have them come out as boost cards, and one way or another only searches the encounter deck. I give Taskmaster a blind difficulty of 3 because there are 2 forced responses which can cause extra damage or add threat to the main. The forced response on Taskmaster can deal damage when you change to hero form, so form changers can struggle, and those who flip down to alter ego a lot can as well. I'm going to modify this difficulty down to 1 though because it only takes rescuing 1 captive to see how powerful they are, and once you do, Justice just makes a lot of sense. Rescuing even 1 or 2 of these allies can really turn the tide against Taskmaster because they help you rescue more captives and help you defeat Taskmaster. This scenario is a turning point. The more captives you rescue here, the easier the next 2 scenarios are going to be. Villain number 4 is Zola, and he's quite difficult. He's the only one I ever dread when I start this campaign. I give him a 4 in blind difficulty because Despite having low health, he has some really scary minions which can get even scarier with certain attachments. Some of them even give them guard. On top of that, you're adding test counters to the main scheme, and when there are 3 or more, he spits out another minion by discarding from the top of his deck, and this in turn can lead to acceleration tokens. I do modify him down to 2 for 2 reasons though. You'll hopefully have a couple of those sweet captive allies in your deck, and while this can be said about every scenario really, the secret to beating him is just go fast so he doesn't have time to overwhelm you with minions. This speaks towards fun for me as well. I only give Zola a 1 for fun because, even with a strong deck, if you can't go fast, this turns into a really long, unfun slog with beefy minions kicking your teeth in. I've played games against him where I've shuffled my deck and the encounter deck and thought, holy cow, I've only dealt 3 damage. Zola's contribution to the campaign is capturing your signature ally under the Hydra Prison side scheme, which then gets more threat based on the printed cost of that ally. Notably, if your hero doesn't have a signature ally, this will only have 1 threat. Easy peasy. But if your ally is still there when you defeat Zola, they're removed from the campaign and must be replaced if you go under 40 cards. Earlier I called this a choice. In my Hawkeye game, I considered leaving Mockingbird there since I almost never play her anyway. However, if you do defeat it, you'll get that ally into your hand, and victory lets you improve the condition upgrade you selected after defeating Absorbing Man. So most of the time it's really not a choice because I think you'll always do that, but you're not required to. That brings us to the final villain, Red Skull. Red Skull is interesting because all of the side schemes in this scenario are placed in the special side scheme deck, and one comes out into play every turn. Red Skull gets +1 attack for each side scheme in play, so it's important to be able to defeat them quickly. I give this scenario a 3 for blind difficulty because if you go into it not being able to thwart well, you're going to have some problems. With that said, I give it a -2 for repeat plays because you'll either make sure you can thwart well and or you'll play Justice. In this case though, I'm not saying you should play Justice as I advise against Taskmaster. In fact, one way or another is useless in this scenario because all of the side schemes are in that special deck. In my Hawkeye game, I swapped one way or another out for chance encounters. But being able to thwart well, especially if you choose the thwart upgrade, makes this scenario much easier. On the flip side, if you're defending with a huge number and have the defense upgrade, you can shrug off those attacks and maybe ignore the side schemes altogether. Those powerful captive allies you rescued really help manage the board as well. I give Red Skull a 3 for fun, mainly because thwarting Red Skull's schemes is a blast. So in closing, let's finish up fun to calculate my replay rating. -1 for every score of 1 after the first. I only have 1, so this is a 0. +1 for every scenario rated 4 or higher. I have 2, so this is a 2. Finally, how much fun does the campaign structure bring? It doesn't really add anything, and it doesn't really detract from the fun either, so I'll put a 0 here. That's 16 for total fun, minus my difficulty rating of 7, gives me a replay rating of 9. So yeah, I'm always down to replay this one. In fact, I'm going to replay it with Spider-Woman, and I think Cable could be a lot of fun in this campaign too. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see me run Cable through this campaign. So those are my thoughts on Rise of Red Skull. 7 out of 10 for difficulty is the same rating I gave Mutant Genesis. It's difficult in different ways. Fun was the real factor for replay here because this one is more fun for me than Mutant Genesis. So let me know in the comments what I missed, and please consider a like and sub to help the channel grow. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a marvelous day.